as an urban planner, we have to know all the systems of a city. So
Okay.
understanding roads to houses to infrastructure, like utilities and parks, and how all of those connect to interact with each other is really what the job of a planner is. City Council recently passed a policy that had a minimum or a maximum number of people who could live in a house, which impacts
Okay.
students who are trying to rent
Right.
houses and live
Yeah.
together to make it more affordable.
Joining me today is Haley Carruthers, and she is an urban planner at Kimley-Horn. So, Haley, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So, let's go ahead and get started. Haley, in the most simple way, can you explain to me what an urban planner is and what an urban planner does?
Yeah, 100%. So, how I explain it to people is just like a doctor has to know all the systems of a body. As an urban planner, we have to know all the systems of a city. So,
Okay.
understanding roads to houses to infrastructure, like utilities and parks, and how all of those connect to interact with each other is really what the job of a planner is. So, a lot of people specialize, but it's always good to have a general knowledge of all those things and how they kind of interact and work with each other and how people interact with the built environment.
Okay. And what made you want to get into this career path, and how did you get your start in
Yeah, so I think like some urban planners, I didn't know that urban planning was a thing. I think most people don't necessarily know that urban
it?
planning is a thing and a profession that
Yeah.
you can do. But when I was little, I always loved cities. I always had this obsession with cities. And honestly, kind of my first interaction with the built environment and a space that I really enjoyed was Disney World. I
Okay.
remember just loving walking around, being able to feel mobile in this space, in this environment, being able to get on transit, being able to get on a
Yeah.
bus. That was really my first interaction with just loving to have access to things because I grew up in McKinney, Texas. That is a suburb of Dallas. And so if anyone knows, Dallas is a very auto dominated place. And so I just
Yeah.
loved that I could move without having to drive or without having to be in a car. And so I always knew I wanted to do something like that. So whether it was at Disney at a young age, I really wanted to be an Imagineer. Or I remember going to New York for the first time and just being in awe of the city. I loved being able to walk around. So I've always had this call to the city in me.
Okay.
So like most kids, when they hear maybe Imagineer, I thought I needed to become an engineer. So originally, I sought out to become a civil engineer, and
Okay.
it wasn't as creative as maybe I would have liked it. It was very math heavy, as a lot of first year civil engineering students find.
Yeah.
And I wanted something a bit more. So I transitioned and I thought maybe architecture was going to give me that. So Texas A&M didn't really have just a architecture program. So I ended up finding urban planning and I fell in love and still doing
Okay.
that today. And actually, full circle moment is when I graduated from Texas A&M in 2019. My first job out of college was being an Imagineer. So got
Wow.
to actually
Wow.
live, yeah, got
Yeah.
to actually live that dream and help build the environment that made me fall in love with the profession.
Okay, that's amazing. And now, kind of along those same lines, what parts of the job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
The most exciting thing I think about being an urban planner is, at least for me, I find it to be really the intersection of what it is to, I don't know, almost like live the human experience. I feel like it's something that the world needs. It's something that communities need.
Yeah.
And it has a social impact. It has an impact on all of our communities, but it's also something I just really enjoy. And so, what's exciting to me is just the people I get to meet along the way that have all different backgrounds and have all different lived experiences, but everyone wants the same thing, and that's to be comfortable in the space that they
Yeah.
occupy and be in an environment and in a city or a community that they want to call home. And so at the end of the day, while I talk to people from all different backgrounds, I find that we all kind of share the same values
Yeah.
and same needs.
Okay. And now, on the flip side, what parts of the job do you think are harder, emotionally challenging, or maybe just not so fun?
Yeah, I would say the most challenging thing right now, just from for being in Texas, is the cultural shift that there is to kind of move away from maybe what we expect, maybe what we expect to be a space dominated by cars. So
Okay.
we have a lot of parking a lot of times, wide cross sections of roads. So sometimes it is a shift of education, and you're kind of having to bridge a gap to let people fully understand and know what they don't know. And so that takes
Right.
time and that takes a lot of effort, and it can be challenging. Um, Especially because I was trained in this. I have background and experience in this, and I have to remember to kind of let my own ego go or let my own experience go and talk
Yeah.
to people how they might understand it. And so that's always a big challenge, is messaging, language, and reaching people who have different backgrounds than me.
Right. And so now, what do you think that people might underestimate or overestimate about this job?
I think people underestimate how involved they can be. I think people have impact in their community, and I think this goes beyond just whether or not a trail or a park is going to be put into your community. I know you're in College Station, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so just using College Station as an example, students probably just aren't aware that they have, policy that's being putting in
Right.
around them that's impacting how they live their day-to-day lives.
Hmm.
So, for example, in College Station, I'm pretty sure that the city council recently passed a policy that had a minimum or a maximum number of people who could live in a house, which impacts
Oh,
students who are trying to rent
right.
houses and live
Yeah.
together to make it more affordable. So people think that these things are out of their control, but if you're really involved in the process and you're going to these meetings and you're getting involved in surveys, you're getting involved, I quite tangent. Because I become an urban planner, I always take a survey. I will always take a survey because I know the person at the end of it would really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, take surveys, showing up to meetings, being involved in local government is something that people underestimate, that they can make an impact on their lives because people are making those decisions with or without you,
Yeah.
and it impacts you. Um, Overestimate is maybe just talking a bit about what I do. So, there's a lot of ways that you can be an urban planner. And so what I do is I'm on the consulting side. So
Okay.
cities would hire me to help them guide future policy or future growth. And so sometimes when I'm going to these meetings and I'm talking to people, they overestimate how much control I have. At
Okay.
the end of the day, I'm hired by the city and helping them
Right.
guide the thoughts and guide, the community's thoughts. And I'm not there. I'm not the policymaker. I'm just
Yeah.
helping kind of that first step. So that's what I would say maybe is an overestimation of how much maybe red tape still happens even as a
Yeah.
planner.
Okay. And now you're in the consulting area. What are some other niches that people can choose to specialize in within urban planning?
Yeah. Um, so I'm going to kind of break it down by private side and public
Okay.
side. So first is the public side. So you'd be working with any sort of municipality, some sort of regional entity. So that's kind of either working with um, um, like a sorry regional council of governments, some
Okay.
sort of city, like the city of Austin or the city of College Station. So that would be more on the public side, but
Okay.
then within that group you could specialize in very certain things. So you could even be on economic development, you could be in long range planning, you could be in site
Okay.
review and site development, so or policy. So there's a lot of places even on the public side you could be as a public
Oh,
as a
yeah.
planner. And then on the private side, what I do on the consulting side, so you can be a generalist. Right now I kind of feel like a generalist. I do a lot of everything, although I
Okay.
specialize in equity planning. So trying to make our communities more equitable and have people who are vulnerable have access to a lot of different resources. Parks
Okay.
planning, so you could be really into park and trail planning, transportation planning. And so you could specialize in some of these areas. I know people who specialize in economic development and market research, and they consider themselves planners. So I like to say that
Okay.
everyone in their own way could be a planner. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
now on the private side of things, who are some of the biggest employers?
So some of the biggest employers, I would definitely say the firm that I work at is up there. So Kimley-Horn.
Okay.
Some that are national as well would be AECom, Jacobs. Um, let me see who else. That's kind of on the top of my list. I know there's HDR, there's WSP.
Okay.
There's other groups that specialize in more niche things like transportation, like Tool Design Group, I believe, is more of like a
Okay.
transportation group. So,
Okay. And
mhm.
now, according to my research, the average salary for an urban planner is about 79, $80,000 a year. So, from your experience, do you think that's accurate? What do you think about that number?
It sounds about right, I would
Okay.
say. I think maybe I've only been on the private side, so maybe my view is a little skewed, but that seems about accurate as to
Okay.
maybe where most people sit. Yeah.
Okay. And now, what are some current trends or challenges within this industry, and how do you see it changing in, say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, great question. So the first is, again, I'm not trying to bring it all back to us getting out involved and voting or anything, but the infrastructure bill was huge in our industry. We are seeing so many communities get funding to make a difference in their communities. So one trend I'm seeing is a lot of comprehensive plans are happening in small communities. I live in Dallas and I plan in Dallas. So
Okay.
there has been just so much growth in the area. And so having comprehensive plans for these cities is paramount to help them feel like they have a plan for future growth and future development as developers want to come in and develop land. As you know,
Yeah.
Texas still has land left to develop, not like a lot of maybe urban centers in other states.
Mhm.
So in some cases, you can have these housing developers kind of come in. And a lot of the times when I talk to developers who are working with these communities, they have good relationships, but it's good for these cities to have plans in place to help them grow responsibly and help them
Okay.
grow in a way that is really beneficial to everyone in the community. So those are some trends I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of people prioritize parks and tree canopy as part of infrastructure for the community. So not thinking of
Yeah.
trails as just recreation, but that these things are vital pieces of our community that we need to
Mm.
protect.
Yeah.
Also seeing active transportation be a big thing. So active transportation is considering how people can get to and from work, to and from a key area through via a trail or bike lane instead of using their car. So those are some big trends that we're seeing in the
Okay.
area or in Texas, which is a big deal because bike infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure helps with safety. So that's a big trend
Yeah.
that we're seeing. I see a lot of people prioritizing equity. I think a lot of
Okay.
these communities, especially from the infrastructure bill and some of these grants that are out there, there's a grant called SS4A, which is Safe Streets for All. That comes with a comprehensive safety action plan that our firm does. And it has a big equity component. And that's really important
Okay.
to see these cities prioritizing disadvantaged areas and how we can get better access and resources to them.
Okay. And now, how do you stay updated with all of that and with all of the latest developments of your field?
Yeah, I'm just a bit of a nerd, so I
Mhm.
just love what I do.
Yeah.
um, and I'm a big person on connections, and
Okay.
by connections I mean just talking to people. I like to stay informed, and I'm never going to know everything at all. I will
Yeah.
be retired and probably still learning from the people who are underneath me and
Yeah.
who were before me. So I just like to hear people and what they're working on as planners, what they're seeing as lessons learned. I go to the conference every year, and that's my favorite thing to sit and learn. But I also read a lot of articles. I listen to some podcasts about, there's this
Okay.
one called, I think it's called 99% Invisible, and it talks a lot about some design trends and has a lot of urban planning
Hmm.
in that. So I just here and there where I can, when I'm sitting in traffic, unfortunately on my on my route to work, I'll sit and listen to podcasts. So that's really what I enjoy doing.
Okay. And now going into your kind of like your daily work, your schedule, all of that, what's your schedule like and what tasks do you spend the majority of your day doing?
Yeah, so my company, we kind of have a funky kind of work week. So we get half days on
Okay.
Fridays. Although
Okay.
I worked a little bit later today, but my typical work day, so it's a little bit longer because we do half days on Fridays, but
Okay.
I work about 9 to 10 hours a day. As a
Okay.
consultant, most of the time I'm answering calls and sending emails. But I like to have collaboration time. So sitting in a room, getting the team together to talk about maybe upcoming public engagement. That's not something I touched on too much yet, but public engagement is a huge part, a huge part of our
Okay.
profession. So always thinking about how we can be flexible to the community that we're working with and making sure that we're targeting the right individuals or
Yeah.
stakeholders of any community that we're working with. So I spend most of my day, thinking about how I could be preparing better for an event that's coming up. So a lot of times I'm getting ready for an open house or a neighborhood workshop where I'm having to put
Okay.
together materials for that event. Or, I'm looking at our data. So we're collecting survey input and we're synthesizing that data. Okay, what are the trends that we're seeing? What are some takeaways? So some other things that we're doing, we make a lot of maps. We make a lot of maps. So a lot of times we're in GIS, working in Illustrator as well.
Okay.
Just trying to figure out how we can visualize all this information because
Yeah.
it's a lot of information, and how can we make it digestible for the community to get our message across.
Okay. And now, would you say that this is a remote friendly job? What do you think about that?
I think it can be. I
Okay.
think if you are coming right out of school and needing to learn, I think there's nothing like face-to-face collaboration,
Yeah.
and just getting those, one-on-one skills with someone, I think is really important earlier on in your career. I think as you get a little bit more established, you could definitely start to do um, some hybrid time at home. However, I think being fully remote wouldn't necessarily always be the
Okay.
best, although I don't
Okay.
know actually anyone who is fully remote as an urban planner. I
Okay.
think if you're niche in some fields, you could be, like if you were just doing market research. But with our job, because there's so much on site face-to-face interaction with our clients, there would be no way to be fully remote.
Okay. And now, would you say that you're able to leave all of your work at the office, or do you bring some home sometimes?
Yeah, so just really quick with my last answer, our company does allow us to have, 4 work from home days. So I will work from home
Okay.
sometimes. And so there is that
Okay.
flexibility there. And I'm able to do work at home. It's just
Yeah.
if there are meetings, I need to go in person.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm really good at work-life balance. Not to minimize what we do because what we do is important, but there's never a extreme emergency to me in the urban planning profession. I'm not
Hmm.
transporting hearts. That is going to make me, if I'm sitting across from my grandmother, not be intentional with that time and be
Right.
completely present with her. So I'm really
Okay.
big on intentionality. And I think that I'm always able to leave work where it needs to be as I take care of the other parts of my life.
Okay. Amazing. And now, would you say that there are any busy seasons with this job?
I would definitely say summer is our busy season.
Okay.
I think with there being public engagement is huge. And so another trend that we're seeing is because of COVID, a lot of people aren't going into our traditional avenues to receive um, advertisements or getting input from them. So traditionally, we would do an open house for
Okay.
people to come in and give us feedback. But a lot of people we're seeing just aren't showing up anymore. So our biggest thing is
Okay.
going to where people are at. So that is at existing community events. And most of the time, because people are out of school and cities put
Mhm.
on 4th of July events or farmers markets or concert series in the park,
Yeah.
that happens during the summer. So we
Okay.
go out to those events, advertise for the plans that we're working on, get people to we'll do intercept surveys, we'll have
Yeah.
people interact with us. And so we find that that is the best way for us to get information. Online is a really great place for us to get information. People are just more online these days.
Yeah.
Um, so I would definitely say summer. So currently right now is a busy time, for us. And so that means
Okay.
I always have a lot of sunscreen in the back of my car.
That's good. Okay. So now going into like specific skills required, are certain degrees or certifications truly required to become an urban planner?
Yes. Well, no, I'm never gonna say that there is. I was thinking for me, but everyone is a bit different on their journey to become an urban
Right.
planner. I know people who are engineers who become urban planners. I know people who are
Okay.
landscape architects who become urban planners. I know people who are went and studied geology and got really in-depth training in GIS who became planners.
Hmm.
So there's no really certain skills or background you have to be to become a planner, because
Okay.
I even think if you're working for a city and you somehow, were interested in public policy and then started working for the planning department, just doing, regular skills, maybe like writing or just, anything that anyone can
Hmm.
do, you can become a planner if you're around other planners. Now it's definitely there are skills that are helpful and will
Yeah.
help you on your career growth. So I would say those things are learning GIS, becoming AICP certified, so American Institute of Certified Planners. That definitely helps me with my
Okay.
career. But yeah, I would never say that a certification or certain skills are required to be a planner.
Okay. And now, what are some natural strengths or talents that you think someone should have in order to be a good urban planner?
Um, I would say some strengths would be curiosity, always.
Okay.
I think always leading with curiosity can be beneficial to what we do, because I think there can be times where we want to be cookie cutter and we know what works and what doesn't work and we just become monotonous. But leading with curiosity um, can always yield better results with
Okay.
just first. And the reason why I say that is when you're naturally more curious, you're wanting to find the answer. So maybe you do a little bit more digging into demographics, a little bit
Yeah.
more digging into the needs of the community, and you might find a different pathway that you didn't think of at first.
Right.
Um, some other strengths would just be being able to talk to people. I would love to say that maybe you could just sit behind a desk, but there is a lot of face-to-face interaction with what we do. Although I know a ton of introverts who are urban planners. I think it's just the ability to collaborate and build consensus.
Okay.
Also great skills and strengths. Um, yeah, those I would say those would be my big ones.
Okay. And now, as an urban planner, what do you end up thinking about all day? What are some topics that you think someone has to be really interested in to kind of enjoy this career?
Oh man. I there's this phrase that I don't know who coined this phrase, but this idea of the world's wicked problems, which are
Okay.
problems that are really hard to solve. And I think all of us as planners stay up at night trying to figure out how we can solve the world's problems, because sometimes that feels like what we are tasked to do. um, Whether that comes from, how we make housing more affordable, how do
Yeah.
we help decrease emissions and heat island effect in urban areas. um, and being a planner is just really limitless, and I keep saying that, so I think it's hard for me sometimes to answer the question. But I think if
Yeah.
someone really wants to get into urban planning, is to first start thinking about how they interact with the world around them and what
Okay.
would they change.
Okay. Amazing. And now, what are some tools or technologies, maybe softwares that you use a lot as part of your job?
Yeah, so I mentioned this a bit earlier. GIS is still a huge one. That would be, we use Pro now. ArcMap, rest in peace, has officially been ended. So we use Pro. And GIS has a lot of features. So there's a tool called Arc Urban that helps us with scenario planning that a lot of people are getting into. So if you want to be on the cutting edge of technology, you can learn about Arc Urban. There is I use Adobe Creative Cloud, and I would definitely recommend that for any students who are looking into more design and being a little bit more creative. So our firm makes maps in Illustrator, and our studio does. So that would be, yeah, Illustrator. We use a lot of InDesign because we make a lot of reports, and Photoshop. So if you're doing more urban design work, doing renderings, then you would do that in Photoshop or SketchUp. Oh gosh, what are some other tools? Excel, we use a lot of Excel. Um, yeah, those are the ones I can think off the top of my
Those
head.
are quite a few.
Yeah.
So now, okay, so what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in becoming urban planners do to set themselves apart from other candidates?
Make a portfolio.
Okay.
You might not think that you need a portfolio because you aren't really thinking about going into something creative, but I think that that is a huge differentiator. And the reason why is because thinking of also strengths and skills to have is to be able to tell a story. And I think that that's something I learned when working at Disney is there's always going to be a story, even with these communities and creating a comprehensive plan. We do a whole visioning exercise, and it's telling a story. It's telling the story of the
Right.
community, whether it's a comprehensive plan or a parks plan, anything, it's telling a story. So are you able to brand yourself and tell a story of how you would fit into planning? So whatever you've done in your undergrad, whatever projects you work on, whether that is a report, whether that is whatever exercise that you've done or an assignment, think of that as a deliverable, and how would you tell your story in a portfolio? I would definitely
Okay.
recommend creating a portfolio and thinking about creative ways to tell your story and tell how what you've been working on in school relates to urban planning, because I think it's more than
Okay.
people think.
Okay. And now, if someone wants to make a pivot from another career into this one, but they don't want to go back to school, what do you recommend they do?
Great question. I think reaching out to people, I think planners are really friendly, and planners love to talk about planning. So I think you would go a long way sitting down, getting coffee with someone. Public engagement is always a great first step because no one really needs like specific skills to do public engagement. So I'll just tell a quick story about uh, during COVID, after when COVID hit, I got laid off my internship ended, but a lot of people got laid off at Disney, and
Okay.
I didn't have a job, and it was really hard to find a job. And so what I did was I found a community organizing group, and it was a nonprofit doing community engagement. And I said, okay,
Okay.
let me do this while I find a job, because
Yeah.
it can still be supplemental work that helps with my planning career.
Yeah.
So I think that there are a lot of different ways that you can get into planning. So kind of finding those supplemental jobs or stepping stone jobs, and going out to lunch or coffee with people who are in those spaces and starting to have conversations. Also getting involved in professional organizations. So APA is
Okay.
our professional organization in Texas. So getting involved in that, again, just having conversations with people and talking to people. I mean, I think we're all willing to take chances on people who are interested in the
Yeah.
profession. So
Okay. And now, what are some books or resources or maybe even programs that you recommend our listeners look into?
Um, oh man, I wish I read more in this moment. I
I don't
read
read
so
either.
many. I feel bad. I read so many like reports at work. I feel like when I get home, I'm not always thinking to like read. So I'm in Dallas, and a recent book that I know a lot of my peers have read is The Accommodation. And that talks about the the character of Dallas and how it's changed over time.
Okay.
There's a book called, I think it's called Evicted, which talks about housing. I think I'm getting that one right. So those are some interesting books. I would say, again, getting involved. APA has some great journals and some great news
Yeah.
articles to get involved in. There's also something called the Congress of New Urbanism. So you can also get that certification. That's CNU. Um, and they have really great articles and things to get involved with. And honestly, like a lot of the times, whether it's what you would typically get your news from, New York Times, they talk about a lot of topics that relate to urban planning, and whether that is
That's
housing,
fair.
transportation, they talk a lot about that.
Yeah. Okay, so now finally, if you could talk to your younger self when you were just starting out in your career, what would you tell her?
I would tell her um, to take a deep breath. I feel like what I would tell my younger self is to don't dim your light and to continue to
Yeah.
um, push for the things that you think you deserve, um, always, because you never know until you try. And so I think that in my career specifically, I was very fearless in the things that I wanted, um, and was able to achieve that. And so there was like one thing I would go back and do differently is to maybe have a scooch more patience. I'm not a very patient person, but I have some self-awareness to know that. So maybe just being a bit more patient, but also knowing when something doesn't feel right, you'll know it, and to trust your gut.
Okay, I love that. Well, Haley, thank you so much. That is all that we have for today. So thank you for coming on, joining me today and talking about urban planning.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm so happy to talk about urban planning. It's my favorite thing.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!